Hey everyone. Hey. It's Wednesday. It is officially hump day. And we are here. Shayna and I are here. It's like beautiful weather in Texas. And so we're gonna jump right into it because this right here, what we're gonna talk about today is so critical, right? Because if you've had a problem with toxic people in your life, you're going to want to hear this. If you're a leader and you have toxic team members or you have a toxic leader, you're going to want to hear this because we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. I don't think we're going to hold back because because this is something
Because that's not what we do.
that's not what we do, for one, and for two, this topic right here is too important not to be real, and we're going to give you some practical tips, some practical ways to navigate around it, because it sucks. Like, I don't know about you, Shayna, but toxic people suck. Being in toxic environments suck, and I have no other way to put it, right? I'm not going to even put it pretty today because it just sucks, right? And no one deserves to be in a toxic relationship, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your friends, and whether it's at work. No one deserves that. So we're going to unravel a lot of that, hopefully get back to healthiness, hopefully get back to a good way of working and a good way of being in your family. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. That's it. That's what we're going to do.
That is what we're going to do today.
That's
So
it.
I'm
That
pretty excited about it because I think I don't think it's so I have kind of two sides of the story. So I think as far as, toxic people, toxic things, I think sometimes that the word is a little used a little maybe too loosely. Um and everybody just that's kind of their go-to. You're toxic, you're this, you're that. And I don't think that's the case. So I'm really happy that we're going to dive into identifying like what is a toxic work environment, what is a toxic person, like how to identify actual toxicity, and then just kind of how to navigate and help people deal with that. So I am so excited about today's topic. Where'd you go? Did I lose you?
Oh my God. No, there we go. There we
Oh,
go. I was
okay,
I
I
was
got you.
doing the controls. I was doing the controls. There we go. There we go. There we go. And that's the key thing, right? Like identifying it. What does that look like? So I'll jump into it. Because toxic people hurt other people. That's the truth of the matter. And so how do you recognize it? How do you deal with it, right? And because you have to be, I really believe you have to prepare for it ahead of time so that when you recognize it, or you see it coming in your environment, you know how to mitigate it. Or if you're in a position where you can't mitigate it, you can work around it and you can get out of it. So my example is, I was in a meeting, Shayna, with someone that I really wanted information from, like knowledge, right? Growth knowledge, like, because they had some really good experience. Their background was amazing. So I was just having, it was like supposed to be like a network situation. And we're just supposed to be
Mhm.
working to like talk to each other and to find like, oh, okay, where does this fit? Like where can I help you? Like where can I grow? And so I know the person had looked at my resume by the way they came into the meeting. They came in too hot, too heavy. It was like way too much. Like it was too hot, too heavy. I know what my resume looks like, right? And it's really strong, right? Just based on my experience, just based on what Yvette likes to do, right? So with
Right.
this situation, they didn't need to come in that heavy and that hot. And what I came out of it with was, okay, that was really toxic. Because one, it was very unnecessary and it was not designed in the way it should have been. And what I should have did is redirected that, right? And that's one of the things when you're dealing with toxic people, you have to redirect it. And you have to own that power and that space. Because if not, oh my God, Shayna, it will devastate you and you'll be left in like a downward spiral looking like what just happened. Like why did that
Absolutely.
just happen? Like, and like it'll make your head spin because, okay, so I'll get into that later. I got two books, Shayna, that I'll share with the people. I don't know if you can see them. Oh my God, you might not be able to see them. I might have to turn on my background, but I'll share them in a minute once I get ready. My background, I'm outside, everybody. I'm on the patio, so you're gonna see my screen in a minute once I turn off my background. But I want you to see these books. So then I thought about, Shannon, what I could have did differently, right? One, I could have took back my power and identifying and recognizing, being honest that that was a toxic situation and that was a toxic environment for me, right? um and controlling that narrative. Did I lose you? Are you still there? Oh man, did I lose Shayna? I think I don't know if I lost Shayna. We'll see if I
Uh,
lost it. Are you still there? I think you're frozen. That's crazy.
yeah, so it just kept loading as you were
Yeah.
talking. Sorry.
No, no, no. You're good. You're good. There you go. Now she's moving. I'm like, she's really still.
Nope,
No.
I didn't go statue mode on you. It was for some
I'm like,
reason it just the internet cut out.
I was like, she is really, really still. So no, I was just saying that I in that situation, right? I should have recognized it. I should have took back my power. And I really could have pivoted that whole conversation to go in a positive way with a positive intent that that situation was designed for, right? But if you're
Yep.
not in a toxic space or a headspace, you really aren't aware of it. So I encourage leaders, especially, be on the lookout for it, right? That's part of being realistic that this could go sideways. This could not be what I intend for it to be. So let me be aware before I get into any situation. And I think that's the first thing leaders have to do is first be aware that everyone does not have the same positive intent that you may have. Right. And then we can go into like if you are the toxic person. So yeah. So but that's what I say, Shayna. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, as far as identifying it, I think that there's like very specifics. So, usually the toxic leader is not going to even admit that they are the toxic person. Usually, that is a lot to do with their insecurities already, which is why they're toxic to begin with. So they just don't have the emotional intelligence, unfortunately, to really recognize and deal with that themselves. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that we just talked about that, right? So kind of one leads into the other. That being said, if
Exactly.
you are in a work environment with someone that you think might be a toxic leader, like you really want to start looking for some kind of general key points or key things that they're going to do. So usually a toxic leader or a toxic person is going to be very self-serving. So they're going to kind of just be out for their own win, right? They're going to have narcissistic qualities. Usually they'll do things that are very chaotic, that are inconsistent. They don't take feedback well. If there is feedback or things that could be, better brought to their attention, they're usually going to ignore it. Or what they'll do is they will like publicly criticize that person, or even just kind of bully around some of the people that they think should be beneath them. And usually those are people that threaten them. There's just so many tactics, right, that this toxic leader is going to use to try to keep themselves looking like they're never wrong. And that's another thing too. If they never admit that they're wrong and they spend a lot of time and energy to kind of prove or make sure that they always come out right and on
Mm-hmm.
top, that is a toxic person, that you have a toxic leader.
Yeah.
um, and those
Mm-hmm.
are kind of just key identifying markers. So
Yeah.
people really need to look at the specifics, I think, especially in the workplace, right? Usually we can tell if it's the person that we're with as far as our spouse or significant other, but in the workplace sometimes these people are not necessarily so open or outward with it. Like sometimes it actually will take someone really focusing on kind of being attuned and knowing, being aware of what to look for, really,
Exactly.
for them to notice that that's even a toxic leader.
Oh
And
my
sometimes I think that that's the difference between starting to kind of get wrapped up in that downward spiral, because it's easier if they kind of do it in a slow way. So they kind of,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not all the time and it's not like where it's like you see it necessarily in every situation. And
Right.
sometimes, Shayna, they'll hide it from other
Hmm.
senior leaders and only do it to the people they feel are beneath them, right? So
Absolutely.
you could be the one that they do it to, because
Yes.
like you said, it's the insecurity, Shayna, it's the narcissistic tendencies that lead to that. And like in the scenario that I described, it was just that bullying. And then this is what, be careful for these phrases, especially in the corporate world or in the educational setting or in the leadership setting. They'll say respectfully, and then they say something really smart, really off base, but they put respectfully in front of it with the cute tone, like the nice nasty. I'm okay with being nice nasty, but I'm not okay with being toxic and rude. You know what I'm saying? And
Exactly.
so this is the thing, Shayna. This is okay. So I just want to jump in here and say, how do you navigate that, right? Like, how do you get around that type of person or that type of scenario? So I got a couple things. I'll let you go first. You got a couple things?
Yeah, I mean, as far as navigating through it, a lot of things that I tell my clients specifically is you cannot control anyone else, right? You
Yes.
only
Yes. Yes.
have control over yourself. I
Yes.
think the key to
Mm,
navigating it, first of all, is being aware of
mm,
what those traits are. Kind of like you said, kind of look for these kind of keywords or key phrases that they will typically use. You really want to be aware of what's going on. So once you kind of catch that someone is a toxic leader, you really have to start controlling your own thought process around that. Which means you really just need to manage yourself. You need to manage how you're responding. You need to manage what you tolerate, what you don't. You really need to
yes.
set up some really firm, strong boundaries, right?
Boundary. Oh,
And
yes.
this is something that maybe comes scary to people because,
Yeah.
especially if it's a boss or a leader, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to say, well, I can't because, oh my gosh, like, what if I lose my job? Or what if
Yeah.
there's some retaliation, right? And all I'm going to tell you is if that is the case, let it go, because that means
Mm.
you are not a good fit for that work environment, and that work environment or that workplace is really not a good fit for you. So it is a
Woo.
blessing in disguise, right? So let it
Let it
happen.
go.
Let
Let
it
it.
go.
You know what, Shayna, and okay. So there's a couple of things to letting it go. Like, because if you stay too long in a situation or a place that's not good for you, you'll be stuck there, right? And you'll do yourself way more harm than you'll do good if you stay in a situation, if you stay in a circumstance that is not good for you. So you have to let it go. You have to be ready to move out, and you have to be ready to find something new. But part of finding something new is preparing yourself,
Absolutely.
practically preparing yourself financially. So it's hard to move, and it's hard to be authentically you when, if you let it go, then you're out of a house, you're out of a job, you're out of a car, and you're losing everything. So I never forget a senior leader. She's amazing. And she taught me this, right? Practical, from a practical standpoint, be ready, right? And how do you be ready? How do you get ready? Financially, save money, invest, put something aside for a rainy day. If you can, just start utilizing your funds to have 6 months of reserve, Shayna. 6 months preparing for that moment that situation may not fit you. So you never have to feel like you're compelled or you're locked in to a situation or to a job that doesn't fit you. So especially as you go higher in leadership, the higher you go, the higher the risks are. The higher probability that they could let you go. One, because your salary is so high, right? So, like, if you're in education and you're an administrator and you want to speak your truth, but you're scared, you're probably scared because it financially will hurt you, and it could financially like demolish what you have. So get ready. Be ready so you don't have to get ready. So that's the first practical tip I would tell anyone. Be ready. Don't live to your means. Don't live above your means. Live way below your means. Not, I'm not saying live in poverty and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. But get to a point where you and your family are comfortable, or you're comfortable if you're single. And so that you, as you grow financially, you don't have to grow everything with it, but you can say, I could step out and not even have to worry about it. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
That's the number one practical tip I would say. Because you never pack your bags if you have nowhere to go. Like, you never can.
Yeah,
You never can.
absolutely.
And so yeah, that's what
Absolutely. I think that there's definitely kind of a point to that too, where as far as, my clients, personal development more so than, my family clients will discuss things like this in their career. Um, a key thing that I tell them to is to really, you have to trust the process. You have to have so
Mm,
much trust in God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. You have to have trust that that higher power is really, even if it's releasing something or taking something away from you and your perspective, it's really
mm,
doing you a favor. You always
right.
have to plan, um, really always have to kind of plan for the worst. So I don't think anyone should live, paycheck to paycheck. And I'll tell people, I don't care if you like to, comb dog hair or whatever the case may be, do something either on the side if you are already living paycheck to paycheck, or you have to be really willing to kind of cut back on expenses. I'm going to tell you a story with one of my clients, stressed out, like having to pick up a second and third job, right? And having to change our schedule because of that. And I really just kind of sidebar conversation with her, asked her, like, why are you needing to now pick up? I mean, you have 3 kids, you just got divorced last year, like what is going on? And we kind of picked apart her finances quickly. And do you know that she was spending $15,000 a year when she's barely able to pay her rent? Okay.
Really?
On a dance studio. A dance
Really?
studio. Like, and I'm not taking away from extracurriculars. As you know, my kids play softball and whatnot. But because it's this academy, whatever, and I asked her a question: are your children truly wholeheartedly wanting, like, do they dream of being, the girl that goes to Juilliard and goes and dances on Broadway? She's like, well, no, they want to do this and this. Then why are you sacrificing of yourself, taking time away from your kids, right, to go work these 2 or 3 jobs when you don't have the means to do so? And girl,
Wow.
$15,000 a year. So this is where it's important to take a look at what you have going on and maybe make some other options, of which now I just told her, find another dance studio. They can still dance,
Yeah,
but it might cost you a
exactly.
quarter of the price if it's not this, big whatever academy. So you really need to look at that, and that will help you kind of sustain yourself and create this plan B that you're talking about, if you will, so that if and when this toxic environment, you leave or they let you go or you're fired, you're
Yeah.
okay. And you're not going
Yeah.
to go into that panic mode or downward spiral.
And that's key because life is changing right now. Companies are changing and things aren't what they used to be. And so it's like, how do you navigate through that, right? Because if you're not careful, you can become a toxic person yourself. And you could be one of the
Absolutely.
people that is creating toxicity in your environment, right? So because it's a matter of stress, it's a matter of like not having enough, right? That's where toxic people start because something isn't right, something isn't whole, something isn't complete. So it's like you have to be able to navigate around that, right? And finding what you're good at. So like you said, like so you can move on. So you can find something different. There's a book. I don't know if you guys can see it because I was trying to turn off my background, but I don't want to mess it all up. It's called Strength Finders. I don't know why it won't let me show it, but I was trying to turn off my background. But I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it, Shayna.
That's okay.
But it's called Strength Finders, and it's about finding your natural strength, finding your natural ability, finding what you're good at, right? And being around those people that promote that. So I'll just like show you, like one of the things I'm good at is I'm futuristic, and I'm trying to find in the book real quick. I should have like marked it, but like I'm futuristic, so I'm a maximizer too. And so, me as a maximizer, I need to be around people that cater to that, right? So, a maximizer, this person is interested in taking something that works and figuring out ways to make the most of it. She may not be particularly interested in fixing things that are broken. If possible, avoiding asking this person to do things that depend that's a continual problem solving issue. Instead, ask them to help when you need to uncover best practices. Oh, so there it is. Oh, let's see. Maybe it was kind of showing through, right? Can you see it, Shayna? Strength finders. So
I,
find your
yes.
strength. Find your strength. That's part of dealing with toxic people is finding your strength. Because when you find your strength and when you find what you're good at, you can alleviate being in those toxic situations, those toxic environments. So my thing is I do my audience, right? My people are educational leaders. So if you know that you don't like to teach, let's say first grade through fifth grade, and you're a person that likes to have more conversations, more intellectual conversations, or maybe help the scholar get to a different level, then look at maybe junior high school, intermediate school, high school, so that you're not in a toxic environment. Because when you're not in the right environment, it creates the toxicity that you're living with. That's what I say. That's being practical about it, right, Shayna? Just being
Yeah,
completely
I mean
practical.
that's almost like that's almost like I don't know, almost like a self-sabotage, which I discuss
Yeah.
a lot of the times with clients too. I think as far as the work environment, there's a lot of people that are comfortable in their job that maybe do not
Mm,
have a toxic leader, but they get complacent, right? So they just kind of
mm,
get like, okay, I'm comfortable here. I know my job inside and out. I kind of go in, I do my 9 to 5, I get paid what I get paid, and I'm good for the week, right?
yeah.
And what I will say to that is there's no growth there.
Mm,
So your vulnerability really is your capacity to be wounded, right? So where do you
ooh,
grow?
that's
It's
deep,
where you're
Shane.
vulnerable a
Mm,
little bit. So I steal these little tidbits, right,
I
from
love it.
God knows who, because I listen to so many different people. But that being said, it really reminded me of like the tree, right? So where
Okay.
does a tree or a plant or anything grow? Where it's vulnerable. Well,
Yeah.
if you are becoming complacent and you're dealing with potential toxicity in the workplace, or you're just not kind of motivated to do more, you have to look at yourself and you have to find those strengths. Like, I
Yeah.
want people to find what sets your soul on
Yeah.
fire, right?
Ooh,
So
that's good, Shayna.
what is igniting you? So
What is
that's
igniting
kind of
you?
like personal development clients. This is really what I concentrate on. Finding those
Yes,
strengths. And that's we talked about authentic empowerment last week, right?
we did.
So
Yep.
again, we have another correlation. So it's really silencing yourself to the point where you can hear that inner voice, know what you're
Oh,
naturally good at,
yeah.
find your strengths, find kind of what usually you're gonna be the happiest when you are creating something that you love to do, right?
Yes.
So,
You're meant
and
to
I don't care if
create.
that's something in tech, I don't care if you're making REITs, I don't care what it is, but
Yeah.
find something that you have pure joy that does not feel like work. And then,
Yes.
I mean, you could even do that as a side hustle. So I think sometimes people do not give themselves enough credit
Mhm.
for what their capabilities really are, right? And
Yeah.
I find that that in itself is toxic. So,
Exactly.
I mean, granted, it's not coming from someone else, but you can actually be toxic to yourself.
Ooh,
So we really need to wake up there as well.
I like that,
So
Shayna.
the
Real
same,
talk.
yeah, the same way that we're becoming aware of realizing it in other people, we have to do the same for ourselves, and that's really where it starts. And kind of to your point, and what we were talking about earlier, that's, I think, the best way to start navigating
It's with yourself.
toxic environments,
Yeah.
whether it's with yourself or in the workplace.
And you know what, Shayna, and you said something that's powerful, because when you don't know your strengths, right, and you're around
Mhm.
toxic people and you haven't identified your strengths, they most times toxic people can see your strength even when you can't. And what they do, because
Absolutely.
they sit around and pick apart everything, right? So they're internalizing everything and they're just like manipulating every situation. And they could spot it right away, right? Because they have that keen awareness, right? And so they'll pick it apart and they'll pick at what you're great at. If you don't recognize and acknowledge that you're great at
Mhm.
something, they'll pick it apart. And before you know, you're shut down and you are just totally
Absolutely.
demolished because you let the toxic person pick your strengths apart before you even acknowledge that you were strong at that. Oh my God, Shayna, like
Absolutely.
why we have to be so self-aware of who we are, what we're called to do, and how we're called to do it. If not, we will stay stuck in these toxic environments. And then, Shane, this is what I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what I guess makes me afraid that as educational leaders, if we don't recognize the toxic in ourselves and in an environment, then you know what, Shayna, our kiddos are left around toxic people, toxic environments all day long. And then we become a nature versus nurture, right? How are these kids nurtured the whole time they've been in school around toxic people? Shayna, like, and we have to cuff that, right? So that our little ones, our little innocent ones, don't become the offspring of toxic environments and toxic people. So that's where I look at it from an educational leadership perspective, from a school perspective, right? We really have to get a hold of that and navigate and just change it, right? Just, and as leaders,
Absolutely.
we got to call it out, Shayna. We got to call it out as leaders. Like, have you thought about doing it like this? Have you thought about maybe saying it like this? Have you considered? So, hey, whoever's watching, write these liners down because I'm not going to remember them later. So, write these intro liners down. If you have a toxic person that you're working with and you know they're toxic, and every time you get around them, they have something toxic to say or interject, like, have you thought about maybe this? Or how about we consider it this way? Or say, that's an interesting perspective, but let's consider it like this. So you shut it down. Like, you know what I'm saying? Shut it down. So that's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
well, absolutely. I mean, I, as far as the educational standpoint, I just feel like, I work primarily with families, families and marriage, but it's
Okay.
exactly the same thing essentially, because we're dealing with, families with children, obviously.
Exactly.
So I think as far as education and teachers and leaders in the school environment, and this goes from daycare, even from
Yeah,
daycare all the way up through, college and grad schools and all this other stuff until you're actually completely out of school. It
exactly.
is so imperative that we have a massive mindset shift. We
Ooh,
need to
shift
we
it.
need to have a paradigm shift, I think,
Yes.
completely. And I
Yes.
think especially in America, because
Ooh.
our culture
Mm,
here, I feel like, has normalized just being toxic to children. We have normalized talking down to them. We have normalized taking away their power. We have normalized taking away their voice, not giving them really just an open environment and a safe place for them to discuss their ideas, their thought processes, and being able to let them start to think on their own, really solve their own problems. And I'm talking down to daycare, right? No, it's not like this. You do it this way. Well, why though? Why can't that small child play in a way that they're just figuring their own things out? And I'll say, for an example, maybe blocks, okay? So, or sorting colors or something. Well, it doesn't go in that cup. And I mean, we'll get right on top of kids, especially the little ones, that they have to do it in this manner. That's toxic.
mm,
And then
that's yeah.
their entire school career, if you
Mm,
will,
yeah.
there, it is almost rare. It's almost rare that you will come across a child who has a group of teachers, especially once you
Yeah.
hit this middle school and high school level, right?
Hmm.
They have so much impact at that age
They
because
do.
the child now is starting to separate. I mean, and this is naturally what happens. As a preteen, they are going to naturally start drifting away from the parent. The impact that a teacher
Impact.
has,
Yeah. Oh,
or the
so
school
much.
environment has on that
Yes.
child
Mm-hmm.
is massive.
Massive.
It's massive. It's life changing at that
Yep.
point. So we really need to give these kids an opportunity to really grow and thrive and be
Mhm.
emotionally intelligent and not grow
Yeah.
up resentful, and know how to have firm boundaries and know how to be able to deal with conflict, because they are going to be in the workplace and will, most of these kids will be in some type of leadership role at some point in their life, right? So
Exactly.
it's, we got to break the cycle. I think, to your point,
Break
we
the
really need to
cycle.
break the cycle.
And you know what, Shayna? Part of breaking the cycle is trusting your intuition, right?
Absolutely.
Trusting your God-given, your natural intuition. Because we get in these situations, we get in these circumstances, and we say, right? Because we have a little bit of toxicity in ourselves. Oh, that's not what it is. Oh, that's not what they meant. Oh, that's not that's mm-mm. And you doubt yourself, right? Because like you said, from the early stages, you were taught to
Hmm.
doubt yourself. You were taught to like fit in this box to be right. And if you didn't fit in this box,
Absolutely.
you were not right. So, like, let's get out of that box. Let's break those cycles, break those chains, and so that we could like shift our mindset, right? That's
Absolutely.
what I do for leaders. That's what I do for schools. That's what I do for academia. It's like, let's shift the mindset, because if not, we'll create more toxicity than we ever had imagined, because the world is changing, things are changing, right? And first,
Yes,
let's trust our intuition so that we can correct these problems that we're seeing, right? From the adults
absolutely.
that really we perpetuate. And I can't say that I didn't do it right, because even when my kids were young, I wanted them to do things a certain way. If I could look back on it, like, I never forget, Shayna, I allowed my daughter, I used to cook a lot more than I do now. But
Hmm.
if you can believe that. And I never forget being in the kitchen, and it was my daughter, she's like 15 now, but I never forget, she was a baby. And like, I'm big on freedom, like, be free, right? Be free, like, be happy, be free. That's like my whole, I probably should get a sign that says be free. And she was in the kitchen and I was cooking. And I never forget that I let her pull out all the pans from the cabinet. And I was so proud of myself, because my parents would have never let me do that, right? Nah. We're not
Right,
pulling no pans out the cabinet. I never, Shayna, like, just that freedom, right? Of her, and which probably why she so wanted to be free now, right? Which is like, okay, I like, if you want to move to Zimbabwe, I don't care. As long as you're doing something good in life, and as long as you're being happy, like, as long as you're not
right.
hurting anyone and no one's hurting you, do whatever you want to do. Like, life is like that's what life is about, right? But just creating those moments where we're not toxic, where we're not hindering people, where our words do not grow a seed of pain, do not grow a seed of dysfunction. They don't grow like a seed from a seed of hatefulness. They don't grow from a seed of our insecurities, right? Remember, I don't know if
Absolutely.
your mom probably told you this, Shane, because I think we grew up kind of similar. But like, if you can't say nothing good, don't say nothing at all. Like, if you can't find the words, like, shh, like,
Quiet.
like, shh,
And
because
see, my mom definitely was kind of, I my parents are immigrants from Portugal. I think I've said that a
mm,
few times before. And I know we've had sidebar conversations, off camera. And I know that I was hit quite often. And what's funny is
mm,
I was hit the least out of all the kids because I
wow,
very quickly and very young learned I better not because there's a whooping coming. And I mean, I'm
mm,
talking if I didn't finish my breakfast, okay? I'm not talking like I did
wow,
something wrong because we were not allowed and we didn't serve ourselves. So whatever was put in front of you, you had to finish. Um or you were severely punished for it, right? So
oh wow,
it was just crazy to me. And here I was thinking that I was, so much better than my upbringing was because I didn't hit my kids very often. I mean, I did spank them. Um, unfortunately, I just didn't know better at the time. And
right,
I'm talking more with my older two, right? So my 10 and my 12-year-old. But I thought that just spanking them when something was severely going on, right?
mm,
So a couple of times a year, maybe, and putting them on timeout and yelling at them was better than how I was disciplined.
mm,
And what I did not realize, and here's where the emotional intelligence comes in, what I didn't realize is I had been killing their spirit since birth.
mm,
And
okay,
I think that, like, it still makes me cry to this day when I do some of my self reflections, which is really important too when you're trying to break the cycle, if you will.
yeah, yeah,
You really have to look at the definition of toxicity. And that
mm,
was never my intention, right?
yeah,
So my intention was never to hurt my girls ever.
mm,
Um, and I think now that I have Araya, right? So she just turned
mm,
2. It's so, it's an awakening
mm,
almost,
mm,
right? So
mm,
I think what you had said about kind of differentiating, how are we nurturing, right? How
yeah,
are we helping their spirit grow? How are we
mm,
staying away from harming their spirit, even if it's unintentional? Like we really have to become intentional
yeah,
with not hurting people unintentionally, if that makes
exactly.
any sense.
It makes perfect sense. I looked it up on the internet. So just to give some concrete clarity and context to what we're saying, like I looked up traits of toxic people: manipulative, negative, controlling, There's like 15 more. Quick to anger, being overly competitive, lack of confidence, abuse of power. Oh my gosh. Criticism. Hold on, I have to cough. I'm not feeling well. So one moment, I'm gonna put myself on mute. And so, like, if you think about those, right, Shana, I teach a framework to success, and it's called the 3 C's to success: courage, confidence, and competence, right? And how do you implement those in your life, in your organization? And with that, it just goes perfectly with the lack of control, the negativity, the lack of confidence, the abuse of power, the criticism, like for real, right? Um, and when I know you're gonna take it from the family standpoint, so I won't even touch that.
Yep.
But when I take it from the school standpoint, administration, leaders in
Yes.
education, right? Are we abusing that because we are toxic, because we have those toxic traits? And what I hope, right? What like I want to live and die, right? Live and die saying I've instilled the 3 C's to success, right? Which is courage, confidence, and competence. Because if you just harness those 3 traits, those 3 characteristics, it's going to make you a better leader. It's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you a better professor, a better teacher, because you yourself have the confidence you need not to hurt anyone else, not to be toxic. Then you have the competence, because that means you study, right? You know your craft, you know your skill, you know how to lead. Because hint, a shameless plug, you got a coach, that can show
Yep.
you like the best way or a better way of doing things for yourself and for your environment, for your center of academia, you know what I'm saying? And then you have the
Yes.
courage. Shayna, this the best one. Listen up. This is the best one, Shayna. This is the best one. To have the courage to speak up. Mm. Shayna, that's
That one's
Shayna.
that that courage to speak up, I think that's my key point with everyone I work with. The
Yes,
courage to speak up
the
needs to
courage.
come from a true connection to self, right?
Yes.
And as far as, so I have two different points. So I'm going to kind of go off with that, and then I'll touch back on the last point that we were making.
Okay.
Being connected to yourself, I think, really allows you to have that courage to speak up. And this is something I am specifically working on with my 12-year-old, right? So um, it is so painful for me to see what I have unintentionally created in her, because she will not speak out. She has become the people pleaser. She has a very difficult time standing up for herself. And also, very rarely will come home and talk about it. So she is suppressing emotions around that constantly. And that in itself is incredibly harmful. However, I created that because I was
Mm.
a toxic parent without even realizing that I was toxic.
Can I
I
say
was
something
highly
right there,
toxic.
Shayna? But
Oh, jump in.
let me, I just want to, hey, everyone, she's saying that she's such a toxic parent, right? But I want to put a plug in here for Shayna. Shayna is a beast. You hear me? So don't be a fool.
Thank
Shayna
you.
is not as toxic as she thinks she is. And I know her girls personally.
I
And
was.
Shayna, those are some of the sweetest girls. You hear me? They walk in my house and they give me a hug. Just the way their look on their face. And mind you, we can all improve, right? But just a rock star of a mom. And I just want to put that out there as a plug for Shayna. Shayna's a rock star, you guys. And just so you know, like, and her kids are amazing. They're some of the sweetest little people you could ever meet. All right, you can finish now. I'm done.
Thank you. But I want people to know that my intention in raising
Mm,
them that way, that was my intention, right? I wanted to
mm,
raise these children that were, well behaved, and they were able
mm.
to go out in public and not embarrass themselves or
Yeah,
not be rude to other people. I wanted them to be empathetic. I wanted them to be caring and loving and giving, but I also wanted them to be confident, and I wanted them
yeah.
to be able to have firm boundaries. But I
Mm,
think the disconnect for me when I was raising them when they were so little, I don't think I had kind of connected the fact that they needed to practice that with me. So I think because
Ooh.
I had such an authoritative, right? And when you listed those toxic traits, I was that. I
Mm.
was the harsh, disciplined parent. I was at the same time very loving, connected a lot with my children. However, on the flip side, the discipline side, any time that they did not meet my expectations, I came down on them very hard, right? So I instilled in them a lack of confidence. I disconnected them from themselves because when they would speak out, when they would, be in their feelings at the time that they were feeling, or they would tell me that they were, I don't know, that maybe they would tell me that they were upset or they were hurt. And I would sit there, even if I wasn't being, mean, quote unquote, but I would sit there and say, no, you're not, you're fine. Well, what am I
Okay.
telling my child to do? I'm telling them to disconnect from
Okay.
themselves and
Mm.
to believe me as their authoritative figure, right?
Okay.
So now, fast forward decades, and this is how you can understand why some people in a toxic work environment will not speak up.
Oh, speak on it. Speak on it.
Okay, so that's the correlation. So
Okay.
normally, I will find that someone who is a people pleaser, for example, or
Yeah.
someone who avoids conflict at all cost,
Yeah.
normally had a parent that anytime that they were not um, behaving in a certain way, meeting
Yeah.
expectations, or their behavior or their demeanor or their anything was unpleasant, the
Yeah.
parent immediately shut them out, meaning putting them on timeout, spanking them. There was some type of significant disconnect or
Okay.
consequence, right?
I like that. That makes
So,
sense.
from a developing neurological standpoint, the first 3 years
Mm.
of a child's life is when that whole wiring process that we talk about in coaching,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when the wiring process is really happening. Those are going to be their default patterns,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then when you have that in the first 3 years of your life, and then you fast forward many decades later and you're now placed in this toxic work environment, this toxic
Ooh.
relationship, um, or you become toxic yourself because now you're basically trying
It's
to say, well, I'm going to now authoritate or dominate over someone else. And that's just coming from a huge insecurity, right? Um, that is the correlation right there. So now your default is going to be to do that. So for the
mm.
rest of your natural life, that will be an everyday process if you want to recognize that. And I tell people this because don't give up.
Don't give up. That's
It's
it, Shayna.
there's a cure for it.
Yeah.
The problem being is that it happens only one day at a time. So you will fight that
Huh.
natural default wiring
Yes.
every single day, but
Every
it is
day.
worth it to
It's
make
worth
the
it.
change. And I think especially for teachers,
Yeah. Oh,
because they can impact these kids
so much.
so profoundly.
Yeah.
And I think that if they took less of a I'm going to dominate. I'm going to, make sure that, they listen to me and it's so
Hmm.
authoritative and they're just going to do what I say and I'm not going to listen to anything that they have to say.
Okay.
Don't do that. Please don't
But
do that.
you know what, Shayna? Okay, two things. So confidence. I always teach people that
Yeah.
confidence is a thing that you have to always tap into, because just because you
Yes.
have confidence in one situation doesn't mean you'll have confidence in the next situation. So it's a transferable skill, but you have to monitor it every single time, because if not, you'll lose it. Like you can go into something new and then have the imposter syndrome and be back in the same situation of just
Yes.
enjoying the toxic relationships, the toxic environments, right? And then and also, so this is what I teach. This is what I teach educators. You have to have a balance. So so when you're looking at different leadership styles and abilities, you have like the supportive, you have the directive. And so sometimes you do have to have the directive, right? Because
Hmm.
it's like critical. And so I don't want people to be afraid of being assertive or being direct, right? But also at the same time be supportive. Like let's have a blend. Like because I hate when I go into classrooms and I only see the directive. I never see the supportive. I never see that level of comfort, oh, excuse me, and giving to others and bringing out the best. Because when you're only leading with a directive style of leadership, You never tap into the other styles of leadership that call for you to be supportive, that call for you to be that leader that can bring out the best in people, that leader that cultivates innovation, right? You can't cultivate innovation when you're being directive. I mean, so it's like, let's not use it all the time, right? Because then we're being that controlling leader. Then we're being that toxic leader. Does that make? Am I making sense with that, Shayna? What you think?
Absolutely. But I think that there is a huge misconception that
Mm,
you have to be one way or the other, or you have to be, you know, authoritative or be very direct in what you need done, and kind of have this arrogance to you, or this, I don't know, kind of higher power type attitude. Or you're going to be lax and supportive and empathetic and all of these other things. And I think that that common misconception in itself is toxic. It is not one way or the other. So I think, and this is why I hate the term gentle parenting, because people, now of course I'm going to go back to talking about parenting, but people have this idea that gentle parenting means that you are not, telling your kids to do something and really having firm boundaries, that you just allow your kids to just kind of be this free being that does whatever they want. That's completely opposite of the case. The difference, and what we're really trying to say, or what I'm really trying to convey here, is you have to be both
yeah.
simultaneously. So
Ah,
you have to be able to give that direction, or I need you to execute this, or this needs to be taken care of, for example, in the classroom. And I don't
yeah,
care if you have a 2-year-old like I do, and it's something as simple as you need to pick up your toys if you're done with them. The difference
exactly.
is my tone, if she's not listening,
Mm-hmm.
will drop. So I will
Mm,
kind of start taking it down to a whisper. Well, now what happens? She's 2, and I've just been practicing this because this was something I learned on a podcast.
okay.
So I'm just, because my volume used to go higher, and based on what I hear my
Mm,
kids say, this is a go-to for teachers. Instead of raising your voice and now becoming that arrogant kind of, what, of a toxic kind of person, and you're going to start talking down to the kids, and now you're going to kind of start losing your cool and hitting a level 10, you drop your volume down. You
drop
start to
it.
speak softer. And what's going to happen there is you're going to kind of flip a switch in the brain where something's different. I need to pay attention to
Mm.
that. The
Oh, I
kids are
like.
naturally going to just kind of be like, oh, okay, wait a second. What is she saying? Right. And
Mm.
this isn't going to be the case every single time, but you
Okay.
have to do it simultaneously, because you are going to state what you need done. Then what you're
Mm.
going to do at the same time is you're going to be supportive and nurture that. And you can
Okay.
do that speaking softly. You can do that not being arrogant. You can do that by not
Mm.
being this kind of like a pompous, whatever type of person. You can
Woo,
be both
I
at
like
the
that, Shayna.
exact same time. So
Yeah.
I don't want people to have this misconception that you have to be like this or you have to be like that.
Oh,
You
Shayna.
actually should be both at the same time.
Oh my God, Shayna. Let me tell you why I like that. Because I think people forget that, right? And that different situations calls for different things. So I always tell people, because when you look at the path leadership theory, right, there's certain different paths you can take as a leader. So you can be that leader that has the behavior that's supportive. You can be that leader that has the behavior of being participative. You can have that leadership achievement oriented leader, right, where you're looking at the achievements and like, how do we cultivate that? So you can be different things at different times. You could be directive, but knowing that you have to adjust your leadership style. Because, like, for instance, my son, and you fed him last night, so thank you for
Mhm.
feeding him. Oh, I want my tacos too.
You're welcome.
I'm just saying, I'm just putting that out there. I was like, Arel, where's, he's like, well,
I
you can
got
have it.
leftovers, girl.
And he was like, I said, no, son, you go ahead and eat. And then like Miss Shayna also made like banana bread, and he was telling me like you put Nutella. He was telling me all about it. I'm like, I need to go over more often.
Yeah, you do. You need to come by.
So, and that's the thing, right? When you look at my son, he's a type of child that needs support, right? I have learned that if I want him to do well and if I want him to achieve, I just put my hand on his shoulder, right? And I talk to him really softly. and I can get him to be what I need him to be, or draw that out of him, right? And he's an achievement type of person. So he's getting all A's and B's, Shayna, because he wants the PS5 at the
That's
end of the year.
amazing.
You know, so I mean, when I
That's
tell
awesome.
you
That's
this
so
dude
proud of
is
him.
picking out all A's and B's, and then like my daughter, right, A B honor roll. I mean, a scholar, right, that's going to be honored at her school on Friday. But she is the type of scholar that needs support, that needs more directive type of leadership, that says this is what I want, this is the expectation, and this is what you need to do to achieve it. And when I tell you that child has stepped up, and so directive doesn't mean mean, right? Because that's where we get into the
No.
toxicity of a leader. It just
Yes.
because you're directive does not mean you got to be mean or rude, and does not mean you get to say respectfully speaking. Like you don't get to say that, right?
No.
You
And
don't get to
I
say that at
think
the
that
end of it.
I
What
think
you
you
saying?
make two very good points there, and I'm going to touch back on one of them in just a second. But I want to keep going with what you're talking about here. So I am going to just point out that exactly what you said. Like you don't have to be mean if you are looking to actually
Mm,
get results and get them
yeah.
quickly, effectively, and have your whatever it is, your school, your business, or whatever, run as efficiently as possible.
Yes.
The meaner or more direct or more arrogant you are, the
Mm-hmm.
less you're going to achieve that because you're building such a mistrust with your
Yeah.
team, right? And
Yeah.
now what's going to happen is you will have people behind your back, if they're people pleasers, or to your face. They're going to leave. They're going to start doing things behind your back. They're not going to really be loyal to your cause, if you will. And they're really not going to care about what you're trying to get done, right? So you
Exactly.
create a disconnect between you and that person. So I think when you can marry those two and
Yeah.
you can be supportive and
Yeah.
at the same time be able to, delegate responsibilities or be able
Mm-hmm.
to, lead effectively and all of these things, when you can marry both, then
Mm-hmm.
the sky's the limit,
It.
because you
Woo. Yeah.
build that trust and really builds that and nurture that relationship, right? And then
Exactly.
there's another thing you said specifically when you were talking about how you how you kind of support a rel. And I want to touch upon that because it hit like a PowerPoint for me, right? There's
Okay.
so much power in touch.
Yeah.
So a simple putting your hand on their shoulder, hey son, this is what I need done,
Mm-hmm.
something that simple with
That's
a
simple.
high five
Yep.
or a hand on the shoulder. There is so much power in
Power. Yep.
touch. And, I'm speaking, especially in a school setting. Put
Yeah.
your hand on the shoulder, or hey,
Yeah.
buddy, like that was really awesome. High five. Like I'm proud of you for accomplishing that.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, right? Touch, I think, especially with children, is
It's
so super powerful.
ooh, Shani, and that you know what? I'm gonna touch back on that. So say like when you're greeting your students in the classroom, or you're greeting them first thing in the morning. And I know like we're in a
Yes,
very sensitive society right now, but what's wrong with the fist bump, right? What's wrong like, and I know we're in a COVID, post COVID situation. What's wrong with the fist bump, or what's wrong with like the back of the hand, high five, or something creative that we can do, right? Or getting Shayna, this would be even better. Getting like a cutout, or getting like a plastic hand where everyone can hit it. Like if it makes a noise, I know it's on Amazon. It has to be. So like when you're walking in, like you're hitting this thing and it's like a high five, or just one, because you're tapping into both sides of the brain, right? Touch and feeling and emotion. So you're just like setting the tone all day long, right? Where you're just like, because like even in virtual teams now, when I coach and direct virtual teams, like you have the emojis, right? Having the kids touch
absolutely.
the emoji that they feel for the day. Like as they walk into school, what emoji do you feel? Bam. And then we could tap into those young scholars that may not be having a good morning. Well, hey, let's do a huddle. If your emoji was this, let's do a quick huddle. Like, how can we help you? What's going on? Is there something we need to talk about? Well, I got in trouble this morning for yada yada. Well, how can we change that around? So we're tapping into everything. So we're just like punching out that toxicity, like, because like you said, Shayna, relationships, people are toxic. Well, I was going to say one thing as an absolute, but it's not, because you can be in a relationship with someone that's toxic and they could totally like supposed to be loving you and like they're super toxic. So that's not always that's not always a given. But we're giving you options, people, to weed out the toxicity that's going on in life, the toxic environment. So we're just giving you tips and hints of how to weed out the toxic environments in school and education and family. So nothing's a guarantee, but as coaches, right, we can keep trying to dig it out. That's what we do, right? That's what the coaches do.
Yes.
If one play isn't working, what we're going to come up with another one. Get out the whiteboard, let's try something else. So because
Absolutely.
every toxic person relates differently, Sheina. Every toxic person does not look the same. So just because you saw, I never forget, Sheina, that's what I thought. You know that they all look the same and they all kind of came in the same shape and size, and they don't. They don't.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. Some of the most toxic relationships, and I'm talking relationships in general, some at work, some personal, some family, even. Some of the most toxic relationships I have had were from people that I believed loved me the most, because that was what I perceived or saw from them. But it was, they were toxic. It was more insidious, right? So it was more slow moving. And then there's also the type that are very openly and outwardly toxic, where they will just, and I had a personal relationship with a parental figure who was highly toxic, just in the manner of how they spoke to me, right? So there are very different ways to be toxic. And like I said, I was highly toxic for a very long time with my own children, and I didn't even know, right? I didn't even know. I wasn't aware. I thought that I was not toxic because it was better than how I was raised or what I was exposed to as a child. So I just want people to understand that it comes in so many different forms, and it might not even be your intention. If you're doing some self-reflection, like, am I toxic? I don't want you to think that there's a certain mold, a certain thing, a certain whatever. There are traits of it, but what you really want to do is put yourself in the other person's situation, especially if you're a parent or if you're a teacher. Look at your students. If I were to reverse the roles, is this something that would make me feel whole and good inside, or is it something that I feel would be hurtful or harmful potentially down the road? Exactly. And I think that might be kind of a good place to start.
And Shane, I like that you said, right? So like, you didn't know that you were toxic, right?
I didn't.
And knowing is half the battle, right? When I look at even some of my relationships and I look back, you made me reflect, right? Like, there was probably some situations where I was toxic to the other person and didn't even realize it, right? But I think part of it is gentle loving, right? Gentle loving. I think I just coined a new term. So we're going to write that down, Sheina. We're going to publish that. I coined a new term, right? I know they got gentle parenting, but what about gentle loving? That you love me enough gently to help me, not leave me, but help me. And if after loving so much, the gentle loving doesn't work, then of course you got to leave. I don't ever recommend anyone stay in anything toxic, right? But if you love a person, gently love them to better, right? Like, if you are, let's go back to education. If you're a leader, then why not gently love your team to be people of greatness, people of oneness, people that can come to you. And if you're a leader, right, and if you're in that situation and you have like educators, or you have professors, or you have the deans that aren't really great individuals and they're toxic, and you're the leader over them, why not gently bring them back? Gently love them enough, right? And I think we get away from that because I think because we're in society and because we are in a different stratosphere, right? That we don't recognize that enough. That part of being non-toxic is true and gentle love. The phrase I just coined, gentle love. You know what I mean? Because love is patient, love is kind, love forgives all, love bears all. The fruits of the spirit, right? Love is patient and love is kind. And if we start with love,
absolutely,
we can remove the toxicity that we have in our lives.
I think that's such a good point. And I think first and foremost, I think we need to do that internally with ourselves. And I know that that's a really hard struggle for some people, but I think the more you can be patient with yourself, be kind,
Mm,
be open-minded to loving yourself more, and really talking to yourself with compassion and empathy and understanding, and truly being honest with yourself and looking at what you're doing and how you could be better. I just think that that would make everything that you do externally in this world just so much more impactful on such a more positive way, right?
I
So
love
I
that.
really love the whole being gentle and being loving, and definitely start with yourself first and let that just kind of come out.
Let it come out. And you know what, Shayna, and we're already at time. Maybe we could talk about that next
No,
week. We're at time, man. Maybe we could
every
talk about
week.
every week. Maybe we
Oof,
could talk about gentle love next week, right? Like how to have, like, are
yes.
you struggling with gentle love in the workplace? Are you struggling with gentle love in your home? And right, and what does that look like? But hey, everyone, as it says at the bottom of the screen, subscribe, like, and follow me and Shayna. We're on social media. And we're here to help. We're here to grow. We're here to increase the love, decrease the toxicity that we have in the world. I'm doing it through education and our leaders there. Shayna's doing it through our families. And hey, we would love to continue the conversations and help you. So as we always
Amen.
say, oh wow, thank you guys for joining us. Miss Shayna,
Thank you all
I'll
so
let you
much.
like get us out of here.
All right. I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Go out there and be more loving. Love yourself. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking, following, listening. We love y'all. God bless you.
Bye everybody. See you
Bye.
next